start off in a minute. It'll be great if you all seated. Thank you. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. My name is Winton Van. I am from Burmese community and honored to facilitate the esteemed panel on behalf of all new Americans. Thank you all for joining the New American Mayoral Forum today. Today we are joined by our 5 esteemed mayoral candidates for the city of Buffalo. From left to right seated are New York State Senator, from right to left. Seated are New York State Senator Sean Ryan, acting Mayor of Buffalo Christopher Scallon, Council Member Rashi Wyatt, former Buffalo Fire Commissioner Garner Whitfield, he will be joining soon, and political strategist Anthony Tyson Thompson. On behalf of, thank you all for joining. On behalf of all new Americans, I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered today on the ancestral lands of the Haudenosaunee, the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and Tuscarora people. And we honor their history, traditions, struggles, and ongoing presence. Today, this region is still the home to the Haudenosaunee people, and we are grateful for the opportunity to live, walk, and share ideas in this territory. We will now start off with a round of lightning questions. Each candidate will have about 20 to 30 seconds to answer. We will go from right to the left, as in order from Senator Sean Ryan towards the political strategist Anthony Tyson Thompson. Okay. A greeting or something you can say in any language other than English. If you know a cousin word, that's fine too.
One.
Just 1, 2. I mean, you want to show off, yes?
Konnichiwa.
Mr. Scallon? A greeting or something that you can say in any other language other than English.
¿Cómo estás?
Abaragani.
Wagwan, Buffalo. And also, hola, ¿cómo estás?
Thank you. What language do you speak other than English? You can start.
English, okay, that's it. I failed Spanish twice, so I'm not a linguist.
No, do not speak any languages in addition to English.
I attempted French, but that wasn't good. Only English.
Speak English, and if you're from, my culture, Ebonics, cultural talk, and a little bit of Spanish too. I actually took Spanish from kindergarten to 12, and all I know is like water, beer, and food. So.
Favorite new American food you have tried in the city?
The most recent cuisine I've been eating is food from Bangladesh, which I find very, very interesting.
I'm a huge foodie. I love different types of food, and so it would be very difficult for me to pick one, quite frankly, though. I was very disappointed when I walked in and saw the food up here, and I didn't know it was here before I got here because I ate right before I came. So I'm going to have to get some on my way out. So with too many to pick, I love the different cultures and different food.
Please do, yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm a very picky eater, so I don't try a lot. My wife always scolds me because I won't try it. My granddaughter does it too. But one of the things I just tried recently was shrimp egg foo young, which was delicious. So maybe I will start trying things. Thank
I'm a grandma lover, so any food that tastes like someone's grandma made it, I typically love it. Something that took hours and hours to make with a bunch of love and effort. I'm for it. I really love pho. I even tried to make it once, but it took hours. I'm like, yeah, I'm just go to 99 Pho and get it. I love pad thai. I love soul food. I love tacos. I'm a big guy, so I like to eat. I could, take it back.
We'll have to go to lunch together.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
After this, we should all go out for food together and try all these items. Okay. Next question. It's what's your dream job?
My dream job is to be the mayor of the city of Buffalo. Because as a mayor, you do so many things, especially to highlight our changing community. In my time on the west side of Buffalo, there've just been such pronounced and profound and positive changes. And most of those changes are brought to you by the Burmese community and other new communities who have come in to the west side. And I just left the River Rock baseball opening up at Riverside. And it was so great to see kids of all different nationalities playing baseball in Riverside Park. You just didn't see that in Buffalo 10, 15 years ago.
Well, growing up, it was to, I mentioned how much I enjoy food in different cultures. It was to be a restaurateur growing up, but that has since shifted, and obviously now it's to be the mayor of the city of Buffalo, to be able to take the city of Buffalo to the next level and make sure that we're providing for all of our residents and improving the quality of life for all Buffalonians. But in addition to that, the job of father.
A couple of years ago, I got my master's in organizational leadership. And when I finished my class, my professor, I told her what I wanted to do, and I told her I wanted to be a general manager of an oceanfront hotel. This politics stuff I wasn't really interested in. It was something that kind of fell into my lap that I became interested in because of the issues of the city. And so I am very much interested in that at this point in time. But before that, it was become a GM. Less stressful.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be a superhero. I wanted to fly. I wanted to, fight crime. I wanted to wear a cape, look cool, and be like a billionaire farm cutter. Now, I wouldn't mind being a food traveler either. I wouldn't mind also having a few restaurants. More than anything, I think transformation is my biggest ethos. It's really close to my heart. So making transformational change is my dream job. I consider myself to be a change agent. So wherever I can make the biggest impact is where I want to be. It's not so much about a job, it's about what can I do. Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, next. What are you most proud of about yourself?
Hard question to ask about yourself.
Yes.
I've had a life, full of changes. So, from when I was growing up as a kid, I never thought that I'd be in this position that I'm in now. I, never thought I would be an attorney. I never thought I would have educational opportunities that I have now. So my life's been a series of transformations. But each step of the way, I've gotten such fulfillment out of doing jobs that help people and change the community. So that's what I've been focused on.
The thing I'm proudest about myself is my family. My wife, my kids. I have a 10-year-old son and 8 and 4-year-old girls, and they are the center of my life and easily the proudest thing in my life.
Like many of you, being a black man in America is very difficult and extreme challenges, and you always have to fight off the negativity because it's always looked upon as you came from a single parent home or all the negative things. So to be where I'm at today, where I have 2 degrees, have a wonderful family, married, to fend off those stereotypes is probably the most proud thing for me. I grew up as a very quiet kid, so for me to be in front of people today, I would have never imagined that. So I overcame a lot of odds to become where I'm at. As many of you have done, I'm sure you have as yourself, but that's what I'm most proud of. Thank you.
For me, it's extremely personal, and it's perseverance. I really know what impossible feels like. Just like many residents in the city of Buffalo, I know what it feels like to be in a family where they have to make impossible choices like paying for groceries or for rent. But I also know the hope of Buffalo. So I know the despair and the hope because I lived through both. I've been able to make something of my life. I've been able to go to school through Buffalo Public Schools, the charter schools, and the high schools. Work my way to an HBCU to get my first degree, Canisius College, and then Columbia University and Harvard. So I would never anticipate it, although I had to, because there's so much despair around that you have to be intentional about every single step, because it's so easy to fall through the cracks going through life. So for me, it's perseverance, having faith, and hard work.
Next, if you could change one thing about the city, what will it be?
The city just needs to be a more open city in terms of looking at how we do things differently, whether it's how we plow our streets, fix our potholes, but also how we welcome new Americans. We need to have better language access services. We need to have a welcoming center. We need to make sure that we can move new Americans right into highly paid jobs to make it so their economic growth can be faster, and we want to make sure that we can have their children enrolled in the best educational programs to be able to give them opportunity, but mostly just to have Buffalo open up and say, just because we've always done it the same way, doesn't mean we got to keep doing it that way.
What I would change and what we are changing is the level of engagement with our residents. I don't think for far too long, people were kind of dictated to instead of brought into the fold and asked what they want to see, what they want to experience here in the city of Buffalo, and we're doing that. We've established business advisory cabinets, establishing the clergy advisory cabinets. We're working with our Office of New Americans. There's people in this room that I've been out to meetings with to discuss things and how they're impacting our new Americans. So it's the level of engagement with our residents and our citizens that needs to continue to improve, and that we've begun to do that.
I think as a 3-term duly elected council member, one of the things that I'm most proud of is that I started in a district that had very few organizations, block clubs. And when I started, they had 20. I now have over 45. That's because we're very specific on trying to make certain that we're engaged in the public, that you're at the table making decisions. I don't make decisions by myself. I think that's one of the things that the city has done far too often, and we are paying for it now. We've made poor decisions, and you haven't been at the table. And so at the end of the day, I'm proud that I have a process of engaging the public.
Welcome, Mr. Whitfield. We are going with lightning round questions. Now we are at if you could change one thing about the city, what will it be?
Thank you. I apologize for being late. I would change the leadership. I think that we have lacked leadership in our city for a very long time, and I think that having appropriate leadership would allow us to bridge the gap between our refugees, our immigrants, and between our legacy families and populations within the city of Buffalo. I think that that has to be top of mind, and I think that when you have someone in leadership that sees the opportunity to grow together and to bridge the gap between those who have just arrived and those who have been here, I think that facilitates growth in our community. I look forward to having that opportunity.
So change is a very big word, and we need to be cognizant of what we want by change. Is it just change, or do we want better change? There's so much status quo in the city of Buffalo, and I think that there are systems and structure at place that really needs to be addressed. There's no such thing as a broken system. Everything is designed to work perfectly. And when you have that kind of impact, you have to understand that when you're talking about systemic change, that whatever thing you try to use or intervention you try to make, this system's code is going to push back. So you need to be mindful of that. Be mindful of that it's going to take incremental change and the right leadership to know when the right intervention is good for the system. So leadership is very important. Having the nuanced detail of conflict resolution and able to hear and listen to people.
Thank you. One historical fun fact about the city you want to share with us, the newcomers.
that in 1812, the city of Buffalo was burned to the ground by the British forces who had invaded from Canada. And the British forces marched from here all the way down to Washington, D.C., then burnt the Capitol to the ground, too. And that our borders on the Niagara frontier really weren't even established after the War of 1776, and that, you know, Grand Island and Navy Island and that whole part of the border, it remained in flux until 1812, and that's what led to that Second War.
I think it's just the number of people from Buffalo that have played such an instrumental role in different facets of history in the city, whether it's people engaged in the Underground Railroad, or the number of people who've come to this city seeking new life. I think that's one of the most fascinating things about Buffalo, the new people that have arrived in Buffalo and their contributions to the city.
I think that the creation of the African American corridor is one of the things that I'm very proud of and happy to talk about, because for a long time it seems as though our history was always minimized, and so for us to have that and that's coming into fruition, I think is very important. And I think it's important for our immigrant community to understand that they have an opportunity to also be a part of this Buffalo history, and we want you to be a part of that and showing what you've done and what your family has overcome to get here. And so I think that that's very important.
Thank you. I'm not going to pretend to be anything other than honest with you. Buffalo is called the city of good neighbors. It hasn't always been that. It's one of the most segregated cities in America. That's the truth of the matter. We need leadership. We need to be honest about that. And I intend to do that as your mayor. Thank you.
It's important to know that Buffalo's history, that we've always been a melting pot, a city of new arrivals. It's been a place where people could come to build something better. You know, my grandfather arrived to Buffalo in the 50s with him and my grandmother, and they arrived from the South, nothing but a code of prayer and the hope of steady work and to evade the Southern racism. And, you know, in his journey, he found Bethlehem still. You know, a lot of blacks, a lot of immigrants, a lot of migrants found and came to Buffalo for work. And Buffalo was still a plant for a lot of people in West Side. And like many immigrants and refugees and families across the city today, you know, they didn't just find a job, they found the community. And, you know, that's the Buffalo I know, that's the Buffalo that's always been, and that's the Buffalo I'm fighting for.
Thank you. The last lightning round of questions. A fun childhood memory you have in the city? A fun childhood memory. But then if you have something else, that's fine too. Childhood memory you have in the city.
So everyone been to the zoo? So one of my earliest memories was my parents took me to the zoo, and they used to have a chimpanzee there named Eddie. And back then, you were allowed to throw peanuts and marshmallows to the chimpanzee. But then, if you weren't paying attention, Eddie would throw a marshmallow or a peanut back at you if you weren't looking. So one of my first early memories somehow was being at the Buffalo Zoo as a really young child and having a chimpanzee throw things at me.
So I'm one of 7 children, and we didn't do a whole lot of traveling or anything like that, nothing too large scale. So the best memories I have of my childhood are just spending them in my neighborhood, growing up with my brothers, my sister, and the friends we had, and just the incredible neighborhood and tight-knit neighborhood we had, and just the incredible number of memories I have just from hanging around in the neighborhood, playing with my friends and my siblings, because again, we didn't have an opportunity to travel around or do anything like that. So it's just the childhood in general, the high-quality childhood I had in the neighborhood with friends and family.
When we were small, we lived in a neighborhood that we had to walk to my grandmother's house. And walking to my grandmother's house, there was a park called Humble Park, but now it's called MLK Park. And they had this big old pool. And I remember being able to go in that pool because we couldn't go to places like Darien, like we couldn't afford that. But being with my siblings and being able to walk through that park and walk in that water was an incredible time. It's something that I found it very special. Now I take my grandchildren there when the pool was full, so they get that experience. But that's something that I have a fond memory of going to my grandmother's.
Me too. I grew up in the projects. It was a poor, segregated community. But one of my fondest memories is on Sundays after church. My parents would put us in the car, my 3 other siblings, and we would drive down Humboldt Parkway before the 33 was there. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful tree-laden parkway where we enjoyed having an ice cream cone and watching the various people, come and go. It was a wonderful time, and it's one of the memories that has fueled my determination to make sure that it gets restored and the 33 is taken out. So that's one of my childhood memories.
For me, it was always the weekends. Saturday was always tough, long. We could set the crack of dawn to clean. But then she would always like to play music, like Anita Baker and the oldies, and we would clean the house. But afterwards, we could just relax and watch cartoons. Sundays, we always had to be church. We grew up at St. John Baptist Church, and my whole entire family went there. So I'm one of 8. We got 5 brothers and 2 sisters, and an array of aunts and uncles and cousins. So we're all kind of like closely related. It was like raised to be siblings. And every single Sunday, without beat, we would go to my grandparents' house for a Sunday dinner, and we'd just all be there sharing a meal, playing together, laughing together, fighting together, crying together. Then on to the next week. So family and good times.
Thank you all. Now we are going to move on to presenting some scenarios to candidates related to our new Americans issues. We have 5 scenarios. At the end of each scenario, each candidate will have a chance to provide solutions. Each candidate will have about 2 to 3 minutes. Since we have 5 candidates today, we would like to request each candidate not to exceed allotted time. Scenario 1, I would like to start out with this 1.5 minute video.
The reason why we're stopping is you're riding the roadway and you're walking. And you're walking.
Oh shit, I forgot about that.
What do you mean you forgot about that?
Like, he was just having fun. Like, he was living with it.
So I just patch it down, make sure you guys know what to do.
What the fuck did he shoot?
Back up! Back up! Back up!
Got shot fired.
Let me see.
That's what I'm going to do.
Over the cross street.
Hey, give me a light here. Give me a light here.
900 block of shot. Keep local. Hang on, we're trying to block the road off.
I need gloves. Gloves.
Now, everybody in here knows or has heard about the danger.
Nyamwe, a 13-year-old Korean refugee, was fatally shot by a Utica police officer on June 28, 2024 in Utica, New York. The New York Attorney General's Office of Special Investigation opened an investigation into the shooting. The Utica Police Department has released body camera footage and stated they are committed to transparency. The incident has sparked outrage and demands for justice from the Korean community in Utica. The family of Nyamwe is seeking accountability from the officers involved. What will you do to prevent this from happening in our city once you become a mayor? what are ways that we can prevent things from happening in our city? Yes.
That was very disturbing. You never want to see that. And I never want to see that anywhere, especially in the city of Buffalo. But I look at this like a lawyer, and I would say that the start of that was there was no reason for the officers to be talking to that person to start with. So he probably started with a very questionable illegal search, which quickly got out of hand without any de-escalation techniques. And is the video showing a weapon or no weapon? Do you know?
So he has a Glock, which is, I mean, the kid.
Yeah.
Yes, he does have, but it is the Glock that's for play in.
It was a toy.
Yes, the Glock.
Yeah, those are, you just don't ever want to see that, but it started with a search or an apprehension that shouldn't have been made, and then it just got out of hand from every step there. So you can dissect that 100 ways, but the last thing you want is to see that in the city of Buffalo. How old was the child?
13-year-old.
It died.
He died. He got fatally shot.
It's a horrible tragedy. No one should lose their life over. It looked, from what I saw, that it started because someone was driving their bicycle in the street. Like it renders me speechless. I find that just quite disturbing. But of course, with all policing, we need transparency. But this all comes to training to start with. How were those officers trained that we ended up, in that situation? But with police departments, it's often just so hard because they're self-regulating. We had an incident recently in the city of Buffalo where not a Buffalo police officer, but another agency, drove their car through the west side of Buffalo. Were driving erratically, hit a bunch of cars. And a lot of police officers came, but no tickets were issued. It seems like if a civilian had done the same thing, there would have been a lot of charges brought. But now we're mired in this, two internal processes, one from the Buffalo Police Department, one from Erie County. But those situations don't make the public have faith in law enforcement and the processes around them. And sometimes with these processes like the shooting, the Attorney General is involved now, but that's only because we passed a law in New York State saying anytime there's an officer-involved shooting, it doesn't get investigated by the local police department and the local district attorney. It has to get pulled out of the locals and go to the state Attorney General, who comes in without a bias and without any connections, and they're not cousins with the police officer or the victim. So that's a system that we hope, so far, has shown very good results. But we need training. We need transparency. We don't ever need that.
Well, first of all, it's a very upsetting video, and my heart goes out to that young man and to his family. But we've seen incidents like this in the past, and I can tell you that during my time in office, I've consistently advocated for additional resources for training and things like that for our officers to make sure that cultural competency is at its highest, to make sure that we are bridging any gap that exists between our police departments and our residents, in particular, our new Americans who may not understand or be up to date on all of laws, whatever it might be. Obviously, that's not the situation in this video, but want to make sure that the training is of the highest level. And what we've got to do is avoid these things on the front end as much as we can. Recently, my administration's implemented a program where our officers are out walking in our communities, walking in our commercial corridors, walking through our neighborhoods to get to know residents, to get to know business owners, so that they can build up relationships and they're familiar with each other, comfortable with each other, so we can avoid these types of things on the back end of interactions. It's a combination of training for our officers, but also making sure that we're bridging the gap between community and law enforcement, and we're doing that with our officers out getting to know our residents on a daily basis.
My heart goes out to that family as well. It's something that we see far too often, especially for those of color. When I think of Trayvon Martin, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, you wonder what would happen if they were Caucasian. It seems as though there's a lack of sensitivity when it comes to someone of a different group, but others get a pass. And I'm not going to say a pass. It seems as though they give a little bit more time. I've seen numerous incidents when individuals of color have been dramatically attacked, and in some cases didn't have a weapon. And so we have to begin addressing the issue of training with cultural sensitivity and holding people accountable. The AG has said that police should not be policing themselves, so in cases like this, there's an investigation for people who are not police officers. As a council member, I made a recommendation for a civilian review board, which many have frowned against because they want the police to continue to do their own thing. Right now, there's an investigation regarding another agency that did some things that were not appropriate, and it went uncovered for a year, and it's still being investigated. But again, if it were you or I, it would be a different situation. So there's two justice systems, unfortunately, still in America, and we have to bridge that gap. As mayor, I will be continuing to work with communities to address that so that you don't feel threatened, that you feel just like anyone else, that there should be justice and law and order, and you shouldn't be targeted just because of your skin color. You should be able to live in peace and be able to look and given the same respect everyone else is given. And unfortunately, for too many times, too often, in America, that has not been the case. Even as I've talked to someone today, as ICE has come and followed up behind people and arrested them and detained them and taken them away from their family. This administration seems to not respect immigrants or people of color, and that's the same scenario as it relates to DEI. They don't think those things are important. I think those things are incredibly important. And for them to take those things away, we know that this is not the same America. And so as mayor, we will continue to work very closely with every organization to let you know that you matter and that situations like these should not happen. And if there are situations like these, we will investigate them and we will correct them, because that's the America that I know, that I think every one of us want. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to piggyback on what a couple of the other candidates have said, I would add my mother, Mrs. Ruth Whitfield, to the list of people murdered by gun violence. I didn't watch the video. I'm very familiar with the grief and the impact of gun violence on all of us in America, here in the city of Buffalo. I think there's a misnomer that more is better. More is not always better. In my community, more police officers is not necessarily a good thing. Police have not been a solution. They've been a part of the problem, and more of them exacerbates that problem. The truth of the matter is we need to implement things like community response teams, where people from your own culture, from your own community, that are able to communicate effectively with you, that understand you, can help resolve these non-emergent issues and reduce the inappropriate police responses in our community. Now, you saw him stop somebody for riding a bike in the street or whatever it was. As Senator Ryan said, it was an inappropriate stop from the beginning. But that is the culture of policing in America and in Buffalo. And that's the truth of the matter. And the only way we can mitigate these issues and these incidences is by doing something different. We cannot keep on throwing fuel on the fire. gun violence in America is a part of the American way. It's a part of policing in America. It's the first thing they do. I mean, that's the truth of the matter, especially in our communities of color and diversity. So I think that the answer, the solution to this is, how do we effectively communicate with people within our community, immigrants, refugees, no matter. How do we effectively communicate with them in a way that resolves these issues in a nonviolent way, that resolves them empathetically, that we understand each other? And it's by communicating one with the other. So as mayor, I would certainly be at the table with your community, with all communities, to make sure that whatever we're doing within your community is sensitive to your culture, sensitive to your needs, and you know, reflects our real desire to integrate everyone into our society in a very safe and holistic way. And so I think that communication is the key, empathy is the key. I don't think we can keep doing the same thing expecting a different result. It has never worked in the history of America, and it's not going to work now. As we grow our immigrant and refugee population, as we become a more diverse society, it's important that we meet the needs of our community and meet people where they are. So that's my intention as mayor.
Commissioner, I think that's a great answer. And when we talk about how policing in America, I represent some suburban areas too, and the initial interactions with the police department in Tonawanda and Amherst is often, not one of hostility. It's not, why are you riding your bike in the streets? So it's also just the first interaction. I just find to be different in different communities.
Well, and so, Senator, I would suggest to you that in my lifetime, I've been arrested numerous times in those communities.
That's right.
And so I'm saying,
you're perceived as an outsider.
I'm perceived as an outsider, but I'm not an outsider.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been born and raised here. I have every right to be here, just as these group of people do.
100%.
And to be treated differently because I look differently is the problem. And that's a culture in the police department and in our society that we have to confront.
100%.
We have to confront it. So, yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, I can't necessarily count on the video that I watched because I don't know the full particulars and context. What I will say is that policing is municipal's biggest bit of control and authority that the mayor has. Choosing the commissioner and how cops are hired, and the culture of policing. I've lived a life where I've had families and friends, even myself, have been on both sides of the law. I've been the person enforcing it and also the person who has been burdened by it. So when we're thinking about policing overall, is how can we make it better? I mean, we can't forget that our police officers are a part of our community, right? They live and serve in Buffalo. So how can we make sure that we are enduring compassion and empathy and applying that into practice and action? First is, how do we train our officers, right? What criteria do we have accepting officers to get into the academy? You have to make sure that it has good trauma response, that it's leading with empathy, that it's the right training to match the community. Community policing is so important, right? We shouldn't be treating our residents like they are a nuisance or that they don't matter. Every bit of city government, every bit of public service needs to have great customer service. We need to make sure we're treating our people with dignity or respect and really trying to resolve issues rather than terrorize our residents. So as Mayor of Buffalo, I will make sure that we have accountability structures that are stronger in place. I'll make sure that we have a little bit of training. I can say that, that video, it was just one small glimpse, it was very short. I couldn't really necessarily see what led up to it, and I can assume all the facts. But as a Black American, I know the history of being persecuted, marginalization, disenfranchisement, and you can be systemically outcast and put away. So, but I also understand that being a cop is an incredibly difficult job. You're never called as a cop on a happy moment. You're caught there, because something is going wrong. I don't necessarily kind of agree with resident response because you don't know what you don't know, and a situation can definitely, elevate in intensity and conflict quickly. And I don't want to put our citizens at risk in that matter. We need to make sure that we have cops who are trained to do the job, who are able to kind of be adaptable to the situation and making sure that everybody is safe and treated with respect. Thank you.
If I may just respond, a couple of things. First of all, it was alluded to that police are a part of our community. The truth of the matter is that many police officers in the city of Buffalo do not live in the city of Buffalo. That's number one. Every firefighter, as commissioner of fire in the city of Buffalo, I negotiated a contract that every firefighter hired in the city of Buffalo must live in the city of Buffalo throughout their entire career. So that's one way, that's one long-term solution, is to make sure that people are from this community, because that's not the case today. And secondly, community response teams is a very well-known, has been very successful when implemented with the correct training and everything else. Police officers are not social workers or any of those kinds of things, are not equipped and not trained to respond to non-emergent issues and mental health issues and those sorts of things. Community responders is old as that's how America started. People in the community rally together, work together, and respond to the needs of that community. It's still operating today. We just want to formalize it and make sure we give them the tools and equipment and integrate them into the response system in a way that they're accepted and known by those first responders, by police officers, by firefighters, and so that they can work side by side with them. So that would be my plan as mayor. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think that residents should be taking care of emergency issues. That there should definitely be a police officer who is trained to handle it. I'm okay with the idea of having social workers if there's a mental health issue. We're not necessarily responding to things with no law enforcement there. That would lead to a disaster and like a very fast slope of the issue.
As a 40-year public servant, public safety professional, I unequivocally disagree and believe that our citizenry are the best persons to respond to the needs of their community. I'm not talking about when there's violence.
It's not a new concept.
That's how America was born.
Yeah, Child Protective Services answers calls all day long with social workers and clipboards without law enforcement being involved in them. And we funded pilot projects, this year to allow mental health providers, to go to people's homes. So if you call and say my loved one is having a mental health crisis and they've been off their medication, you want a social worker to go to the door to help with that. I mean, you don't need a firefighter or a police officer for that. You got to send the right person, and that program's proven to be quite successful. So this isn't a new concept. This is quite a new
Thank you
concept.
for all the discussion that's going on.
We as a community can come together and collaborate. We don't have to work in silos as a city. We can have both a law enforcement officer and a social worker there. I don't see an issue with that.
Well, do you want to send a law enforcement to every Child Protective Service call?
If someone is calling for emergency service issues and they're obviously in distress, you don't know what you don't know. They can be walking into any situation.
But they call it.
I'd like to respond to the question, Sean. If someone is calling in distress to 911 services and they're saying that something is happening, you need to have both. We don't have to choose as a city. You can have both a social worker and someone there to protect the situation and to enforce safety and public safety.
Well, I guess if the scenario is like you said, I'm having an emergency that requires law enforcement, then of course. But a lot of the calls coming into 911 are calls for wellness, and it's not necessarily an emergency. And I don't think that police officers should be at child protective calls. We have a great system that works without that.
That's not practical, Sean, because if someone is calling for emergency, whether it's a mental distress issue, someone needs to be there immediately. Are you going to call social service to be there in 30 seconds? That's a cop's responsibility. They need an immediate response to it, so you need to have both. The cops can be there. Cops can be there to sort the situation.
I guess I agree with you. That it's not, if it's cut and dry like what you're suggesting, of course. But a lot of the situations, like the commissioner is referencing, that's not often the situation. And mental health providers, do a good job, going alone to these things.
So Mr. Tyson Thompson mentioned earlier that, it starts at the top of the commissioner. And since becoming mayor, I hired a new commissioner. a 37-year veteran of the Buffalo Police Department, born, raised, and still resides on the east side of Buffalo. Someone who's dedicated to the city of Buffalo and its residents. Someone who, as I mentioned, was completely in favor of having our residents or our officers out walking in our community, getting to know our residents in order to avoid a lot of the issues that we see. But on this topic, we also have the behavioral health team that is embedded within the Buffalo Police Department. What you can't have is people showing up to calls that you don't know what the outcome might be. It was mentioned that these are cut and dry sometimes. A lot of them, they might seem cut and dry, but they can go south very quickly. So when you have a situation or a model where both are responding, but you can allow a mental health professional or whoever else it might be to take the lead, and then should something go south, you have that assistance, that backup. But again, it's not a one-size-fits-all where you can send residents to respond to emergency calls. It has to be a combination of the two, like we have with the behavioral health team and the Buffalo Police Department.
We have to make sure
Thank
that, yeah, I'm sorry, just one more thing. We have to make sure that we're not over-reciprocating the process and complexity of what law enforcement is. At its very root, it's created to make sure that people feel safe. But there's so much nuance to go in a situation that can turn from a second to a split second. Cops have to make life-making decisions within a split, right? And we shouldn't, let me finish. And we shouldn't just necessarily just give it to, community responses. We should have task force that are trained in mental health. Same way we have a SWAT team. The same way that we can have a department that is also law enforcement. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can take the cases or the case studies you guys have mentioned and apply it to a new culture in the city of Buffalo. But just automatically scratching everything that we've done to just make something like that, it's not really plausible in reality. It's not the right solution. If you're looking for anything like that, I think it's a little dangerous and slippery slope.
Okay.
This is a really good segue to our next scenario, still related to police and with ICE. So I'm sure you all are aware of Newark Mayor Rex Baraka on his arrest at ICE facility. Newark is seeking to halt operations and ensure that the facility complies with local fire, health, and safety regulations, including obtaining necessary building permits. The city argues that the facility lacks proper inspections and poses life safety risks. This is not a direct comparison to our city, but Buffalo's history of immigration has long been a source of pride. However, there have always been immigrant communities that are excluded. The federal government is targeting immigrants through enforcement policies and practices that change daily in confusing and complicated ways. Much of the impact is the direct harm, but the fear and chaos also do harm. In Buffalo, and everything that follows are specific observed examples. Kids don't go to school, people don't go to work, and are living in severe poverty, and families don't seek medical care. Publicly standing with immigrants is not a symbolic action. The harm goes beyond immigrant communities. Businesses shatter, work crew lost workers, schools are in fear as students despair, and tenants are forced to default on rent and leases. How will you, as mayor, communicate to all city residents that you will stand with them and protect them? And more specifically, we have seen instances of local police departments across the state working closely with the federal immigration enforcement agents. If you are elected as mayor, will you direct Buffalo Police and local agencies not to collude with immigration enforcement and ensure that local resources are not being used for immigration enforcement? You can start from the left to right. We can continue starting from.
So I guess to summarize the question, are you asking should Buffalo Police coordinate with organizations or department agencies like ICE?
Yes. In a way, will you also issue an executive order to stop police from sharing people's immigration status with ICE?
So as mayor of the city of Buffalo, no, we're not coordinating too closely with ICE. Local police are here to keep us safe, not enforce immigration laws. You know, I speak to a lot of residents from the Bangladesh community, from the Middle East community, Asian communities, who say that, you know, they're afraid of, you know, speaking their language or going outside, or when an issue happens, about calling the police for help, because they're afraid that their immigration status might come into play when responding to law enforcement. And as a city leader, doing that kind of approach would ultimately hurt the city of Buffalo, because then people will have a public health issue, a public safety issue, so many other disasters. Our city should focus should be on taking care of our residents, making sure they have access to all of the city's resources, making sure they're treated with empathy. The children can go to school, the elders can go to hospitals, treat people with compassion. And as mayor, I'll be a leader to that in standing up for every migrant, every refugee, and every immigrant in the city of Buffalo.
Mr. Whitfield.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, as a 40-year public safety, public health professional, I have worked locally, I have worked across the state, and I have worked internationally to support, defend, and protect all Americans and all citizens, all people. There is no allowance for either of us to be subjugated or to be made vulnerable to ICE or to any other law or any other entity or organization that looks to divide us or looks to take advantage of us. And so as a Black American, someone who has been discriminated against, I understand completely how vulnerable you may feel, how at risk you are in these current times, and as mayor would make it a priority to make sure that you are safe, that you feel welcome, and that you feel secure within our community. That's our job. That's our, not just our job, but that's our duty as Americans, but more importantly as human beings, to recognize our likeness, and to recognize the things that we have in common. And those are the things that I would make a priority of mine in my administration.
Yeah, this is a different America. We have a president who does not respect the melting pot of immigrants, and it's unfortunate. I will stand with you. I will speak loudly. I will not shriek and not speak up, because I do believe that many of our Congress people and electeds have been quiet on this issue. And you can't be quiet, because I know the fear that you all have, that you can't go to your school, you can't worship, you can't do the things that are important to your quality of life because of the fear of someone just coming up one day and just snatching you away from your family. And that's something that we all should have a concern of. It shouldn't be just one group, it should be all of us. And so I think one of the most important things is when we stand together, there's power. But when we leave each other into our little silos, it's diminished. And so one of the things I will do as mayor is to make certain that we all recognize the threat to one is a threat to us all. Because as you can be deported, my friends, my families can be done in that same way. But we have to educate and help people understand where we are. And there's strength in numbers. And you can, if you know me in my district, I'm one to speak up, even when the odds are against me, even when the numbers are against me, because I stand for the people. I will always stand with you, and I will meet with you, and I will actually create a coalition so that it's not just you by yourself, because many times you feel, kind of lost and by yourself. And you shouldn't feel that way in America. You shouldn't feel that way in the community. Although Buffalo at times can be very segregated, I think we're moving in the right direction. But we need to have that great understanding and interaction so that we can improve our livelihoods, improve our quality of life. But again, seeing these young people here, we need your energy, we need your insight, and we need to stand with you, because you are the ones on the front line who are most at risk. And so how do we help you? We help you by standing together, creating a platform and hearing from you what things are happening and working with law enforcement. Because we have to let them know that, hey, we want you to be on our side. We want you to defend us. You know, you're here to defend us. You're not here to detain us or take us away or set us up where ICE can come and arrest us. We need their partnership. So I will definitely make that a priority and work to make sure that you are safe. You shouldn't have to stay in your homes. You shouldn't have to miss work. You shouldn't have to miss school because of the threat of someone just taking you away just because you're from a different country. Thank you.
To remind the question again, if you are elected as a mayor, will you direct Buffalo Police and local agency not to collude with immigration enforcement and ensure that local resources are not being used for immigration enforcement? And will you also issue an executive order that police not to collude with the...
So our diversity in Buffalo is our strength, and you can see that all across the city. We've experienced a population growth in the city for the first time in 7 decades, and a large portion of that is our new Americans that have come to Buffalo. People who are rehabbing residences, opening businesses, creating festivals, and just improving the overall quality of life here in the city of Buffalo. And I was very clear during my State of the City address that anyone who calls Buffalo home, while I'm mayor, will have the opportunity to do that. And you will have a government in the city of Buffalo that works to protect you. The city of Buffalo's police department's job is to protect and serve the residents of the city of Buffalo, regardless of where you originate from. If you're a resident of the city of Buffalo, their job is to protect and serve our residents. So no, we will not collude with or work with agencies to pull people out of our community. I can tell you that very early on in my time as mayor, the president started cutting funding to organizations that impact our new Americans a great deal. And working with my Office of New Americans, our Chief Diversity Officer, a lot of the resettlement agencies, we got together very quickly to make sure that those end users were not negatively impacted. That initial round of freezes, and I want to thank Councilmember Wyatt too, as a city council member. It was a prime example of how the city can work together. There was an situation where a lot of funding was going to be cut to a lot of our resettlement agencies, but we got to work very quickly. My administration, the Common Council, the City Controller, the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency, calling special meetings in one day to get together to make sure we pulled down funding that was going to be cut. We were able to do that. A couple hours later, the freeze was rescinded by a judge, but it's a prime example of what we can do when we work together to make sure we're protecting our new Americans. And I think we'll continue to do that moving forward, whether it's the Buffalo Police Department, my administration, the Common Council, whoever else is elected to represent the residents of the city of Buffalo. We will protect the residents of the city of Buffalo.
Mr. Ryan.
And we should, in order, saying that the city agencies can't collude and work with ICE.
Have I? No.
When I become mayor, I will issue an order saying that the city agencies cannot work with ICE. New York State already has an order saying the state agencies cannot work with ICE. I stood with this community during the last administration. I came and protested when they did the refugee ban. I came and protested when they did the Muslim ban. I then took action and made sure that we get money to the refugee resettlement agency so they can stay open during the last Trump administration. This year we came through with another $7 million to fund our resettlement agencies and make sure that they're still here when this president leaves office and the United States regains normalcy, that we're ready to continue to resettle people. We know that there's people right now, heartbreaking stories. They were scheduled to be on a flight the next day out of a deportation camp in another country to come to safety in America, and those flights were canceled. Heartbreaking stories. I think I met one of the last Burmese people, or someone from the Karen community, who was able to come in. That day she landed, they issued an order saying no more refugees coming in. It's an awful thing that's happening. We have to make it so it does not take place in our city. Nobody in our city should fear going to any city agency than having the member of that city agency then call ICE on them. And if you don't have an executive order protecting people, they're not going to trust the city government. So the city of Buffalo has to, under its executive, order that order. If not, these are just empty words. And I'll close with saying, you have to symbolically stand with the community so they know. You have to be publicly out there and show them that your support. Honor their fear, because the fear is real. You don't know what ICE is going to do because they're all over our city because we're a border town. But one thing concretely that I will do as mayor is I will issue that executive order to make sure that anyone who comes in interaction with city government, that city government employee then does not call ICE and have them deported.
It's great to talk about symbolic gestures. I'm talking about practical application. And if you go and ask resettlement agencies who's been working with them to make sure we are protecting our new Americans, they will tell you that my staff, my administration, and I have been doing so. This is what the senator does. He'll make a bold statement, talk tough, and then without regard for what it might impact, how it might impact the end user.
I put
I'm
$7
talking.
million
I'm
into
talking.
refugee
I'm not
resettlement
saying-
agencies. How
And
much did the
then
city
you
budget?
left people sitting in a parking lot in Amherst for a weekend because you didn't do things the right way. You let new Americans sit out in a parking lot all weekend in Amherst outside of a hotel.
I did?
Yes, your program did.
How much money did the city budget put into helping refugees and immigrants?
We work every year, every day with our resettlement agencies to make sure, and I just told you
So zero.
that no,
Zero.
not zero.
I just want to ask one question. If can I ask one question, Senator? There's legislation right now to protect immigrants at the state. Where are we with that? Can you just talk about that?
I support it, and I hope it gets to the floor for a vote. And that would make it so mayors who don't have the guts to sign their executive order, that the state would say you have to do that. You have to be protected. That's how that would work.
Again, a lot of tough talk and throws things against the wall, doesn't consider how it ultimately impacts the end user. And we've been sitting here as an administration working every day with our resettlement agencies, other organizations who administer these programs to make sure they aren't. And during our conversations have been very clear to them, if the funds that dry up that are coming to that we've been able to secure for you, we will make sure we step in and finish the job for you.
With that, so the next scenario we have is exactly that. So new Americans brought not just diverse culture and lingual assets, they also brought significant economic capitals and professional expertise. One great example is the investments in local housing stocks by our Bangla Americans. Likewise, many have developed skills and expertise in high-end, high-need, high-demand industries such as engineering, information technology, and healthcare. We have seen that some major welcoming cities created unique partnerships and implemented strategies to utilize skills and talents new Americans brought with them. For instance, the unique partnership between Cleveland Clinic and local higher education institutions allows many new Americans to transfer their knowledge and skills without going through cumbersome and costly re-education processes. Certain entities within the city administration, such as the Office of New Americans, ONA, could serve as a facilitator or a convener. If elected as mayor, how will you direct ONA to help explore such opportunities? We can start with Mr.
Thank you. I have a large Bangladesh community in my district, and I've worked very closely with them. And I know that they are interested in playing a larger role in government. And I think that's one of the ways that we can facilitate those types of partnerships, is by having those individuals within the administration to assist and creating such dynamic initiatives to pull us all up. I think that everyone brings something to the table and strengthening our community, and we do that by working together and having people at the table who can assist and facilitate those creative ideas. I know the Bangladesh community has done a tremendous job as far as improving our housing stock. Many of the houses in my district that were derelict, they've purchased and rehabbed them, and now they're great pieces of property that represent our community very well. So I know that those types of initiatives, working with various groups, even the Arab community, Burmese community, bring a great deal of strength to our neighborhoods. And I think that, again, bringing those individuals in the administration, working together collaboratively will make for a better Buffalo. Thank you.
Mr. Scanlon, please.
So I can tell you that the city of Buffalo is only going to be at its best when we have people from a diverse background with their perspectives coming to the table and making sure they're part of the conversation. Since becoming mayor, my administration has gotten more diverse. It's the most diverse it's ever been, representing people from all across the city of Buffalo, and we'll continue to do that to make sure that we have people working on behalf of the residents that have those different perspectives, those different outlooks on life. We're also in talks with the University of Buffalo and some other large employers about putting together some programs to bring people into the fold to be able to access some of the jobs that you're referencing. So it's about partnerships and collaboration, and we'll continue to do that. It's making sure that we're all on the same page and communicating, partnering together, and providing the opportunities to new Americans that should be available to them and sometimes aren't. But through great partnerships like we're going to establish with the City of Buffalo, the University of Buffalo, and some of our larger employers, you'll see that start to benefit some of the new Americans in the near future.
Mr. Tyson Thompson, please.
I believe that, we can't keep expecting New Buffalo from, the same old leaders and the same old things, the same old ways. We have to find ways to innovate the system and how we approach everything. I think currently my biggest critique is that we do approach things in silos. I think that also it becomes difficult. We need to support and collaborate with our residents. We're not always the expert of everything. We need to actually listen and hear what you guys are saying, how you guys need help and to be supported. Buffalo's always been a melting pot of cultures. You get, beef on wet, pad thai, chicken wings that are all staples of the city. So it's a diverse of culture, foods and feelings, emotions and festivals. Every single weekend in Buffalo, spring and summer, there's a different heritage festival going on. We have to make sure that we're supporting our people, that when they come to the table, they can express their vision, their wants for the city, and that we can incorporate it into our city planning and moving forward. I think that ultimately when our people are supported, regardless of their cultural background, racial background, or history, that we create a stronger Buffalo, one that's new and hope and promise. And as mayor, that's what I tend to lead.
Mr. Rand,
Every new community that comes to Buffalo has these great potentials, but often it's untapped because of language barriers, people who have degrees and qualifications in their home country that don't transfer here. So it's a big challenge. We need to keep working with the resettlement agencies, but the city also needs to take the lead in creating a welcoming center. And the welcoming center will be staffed by people who speak the languages of people who live in Buffalo, and they become a one-stop shop for helping parents, with questions about the education system, helping parents understand how they can get into different language access programs, what jobs are available, how do we get into higher education, if I have a degree in my home country, what do I need to do to get a degree here? Right now, it's very difficult for new Americans to figure this out on their own. But if we could have one center where all this is concentrated, it'll make it a lot easier, and it'll just untap the people's growth and their potential that they have. Because it breaks my heart when I talk to a new American, and in their home country, they're an engineer or a social worker, or a physician, But here, they can't do that. And, we worked with the state education department to try to make it so it's easier to transfer some of the degrees in their licenses from their home country. But it's an awful lot to negotiate on your own. And that's why I think it's important to have this one-stop shop welcome center.
Thank you. Mr. Whitfield, please.
Thank you. You know what? I'm going to be honest. I think that everybody sitting up here has good ideas and good intentions, quite frankly. And many have.
I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. We go. Yeah. And then.
Okay. No, listen, I think that I agree with everything that's been said up here, and I applaud everyone up here for the work they've done. I think that this is an issue that is top of mind for all of us. I think all of us in some way have experienced being left out, being discriminated against, and I think there's a real sincere empathy here. I think the mistake being made is that there's no one correct way to do this. There is not. There has to be a declaration by the executive of the city that unequivocally states that city workers will not work with ICE, period. That has to be said. I agree with that. But I also applaud the interim mayor for the work that he's done, that his administration is doing. I think that at the end of the day, what we need is leadership that looks beyond our political parties, beyond our political aspirations, and puts you first. And that's what we need. And we need to be collaborative in that. We need to work together collectively as a community, no matter who the mayor is. We need to be able to work together as a community to represent this community. And I think that's the answer.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And
Folks,
then
I apologize.
With that, that's a good segue to the last question you can have, all can have. Where do you see where Buffalo is if you were a team? Please feel free to openly discuss among yourself. That was the.
If we were a team?
Yes, if you all were a team.
That's what I just said.
Yes, that's right. It's.
Yeah.
Before you go, Mr. Scanlon, if you could quickly answer.
Yes.
Or you could all, you're
So,
open for your discussion.
The thing I talk about most is partnerships and collaboration and working together, pulling in the same direction to make sure that we're trying to achieve the best version of the city of Buffalo. And regardless of what happens in an election, shortly thereafter, you have to regroup and make sure you're working on behalf of the residents. You've got 3 elected officials up here. And after that election, all 3 of us will still be elected officials. So it's important that once an election's over, we get back together and get to work to make sure we're representing the residents of Buffalo to the best of our ability, to make sure that we're improving the quality of life of residents, make sure we're investing in our neighborhoods all across the entire city of Buffalo, investing in our youth, protecting our seniors, ensuring that there's housing options for everyone. So again, it's about partnerships and collaborations. Once the politics is removed and the elections are over, it's about getting back to work and making sure we're all pulling in the same direction for everyone in Buffalo. But again, I apologize. I have an event that I'm a sponsor of that I do need to get to. I'm about 20 minutes late for already, so I'm terribly sorry, but I do have to go. But I want to thank you all for coming out today, and I want to thank you all for hosting.
Where do you see where Buffalo is if you were a team? And you can, it can be open discussion among yourself.
If we were a team,
yes,
we would win the Super Bowl if we were a team. I think it's so important for us to engage every sector of our city to make sure that people feel a part. Many times people feel that they're not a part. They feel like they're on the outside looking in. And I think that the mayor should be the servant leader and chief cheerleader to make certain that every sector of our city feels a part. If we do that, we can win. Right now, every sector feels separated. There's something that they feel that they've been alienated on. That's going to be the mayor's job to pull together. Even the current mayor, we have those tendencies to continue to do what we've been doing, and we can't do that. I think that as a council member, I've been one of those people that many times have been very outspoken, and not outspoken for being outspoken's sake. Outspoken because a lot of times I feel the same way you feel, that I'm not included, that I'm just here, I'm just a spoke in the wheel. We have to change that mentality. If Buffalo is going to reach its true potential, I will not be able to be unless you're what you are. We have a lot of things that we have to do. Number one is our educational system. It's improving, but it could be better. And why is it not better? Why is it not as the best version? Because we don't work together. This Common Council and the city don't work collaboratively with the school board when we should. Because if our children aren't given and fed and growing, our city cannot grow. I talked to a gentleman some months ago, and he was talking about bringing his family to Buffalo. And he was asking about our school system. And I don't want to disparage our school system, but the thing that he asked me is, can my children thrive? Well, not at every school. If they go to City Honors or Hutch Tech or, Olmsted, which is in my district, thank goodness. They can, but not every school. But why isn't that? Why isn't that every child can thrive at any school? So I think that's going to be one of my initiatives, is to work more collaboratively with our Buffalo school system, so that, again, as you talked about the team, we can win. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember, for focusing on education. I agree wholeheartedly that the mayor absolutely should be working with the school board and in a collaborative way. Well, I didn't hear this question. I didn't know what this question was going to be, but I kind of spoke to this in my last comment, okay, about working together and how we work together and how we need to be working collaboratively. This is a race, it's a campaign, but at the end of the day, nothing is more important than why we're running, and we're running for you. And as long as we're running for you and running for the right reason, I think that we should be able to work together and put our divisions, put our disagreements or whatever to the side, because nothing is more important, and especially in this moment, than us coming together, because it starts at the top. We can't expect our communities to come together and integrate and love one another and be tolerant of each other when we don't do that as leaders. And I think that that's part of the problem. As new Americans, as refugees, you've come into this community, talked about the housing and the businesses that are thriving here. That there's a tension in these communities from legacy families that have been here all along and have not had that opportunity. Nobody talks about that. It takes leadership to make sure that that's addressed and to make sure it's understood. I had the opportunity to meet with some new Americans or some new arrivals here in the city just the other day, and learned a lot about how they got here, how they arrived here, why they came here. I understood so much more just having a conversation with them. And that's what we don't do. We have to communicate one with the other. We have to understand, each other, look each other in the eye, be honest and open with each other. And I think that is going to go a long way towards helping us grow and thrive as a community. You need leadership who makes that a priority. Leadership who puts away the political nonsense and all of these other things about whose area you're in and all that, and who represents you. We represent you. As leaders in this community, everybody, no matter what part of the city you come from, should be representative of the things that are important to you. And I think that that's something that we have to develop. It's not the way it is now, but it will be under my administration.
One of our founding fathers, I think it was Ben Franklin, used to say, a difference in opinion is not a difference in principle. And while, I like and respect and have admiration for every man on this stage and everyone who decides to enter the public and political arena, ultimately we always have to engage and collaborate with one another. My first master's was at Columbia, and I studied negotiations and conflict resolution. And there's never a conflict That's the issue, is how we approach it. Do we do it in a way that is, butting heads, or do we do it in collaboration with each other? There's this old story about two kids who are fighting over an orange, and they both want it. And the mom comes outside, and let's just call her the mediator. And she asks, what do you guys want the orange for? And one of them says, well, I want the orange because I want to eat it. And the other kid goes, well, I want the orange because I want the peel so I can use the zest for muffins. See, it's only through collaboration, it's only through general curiosity, being inquisitive, and wanting to know the why behind other things to get to the underlying need that we can really come together to build solutions. So it's not a zero-sum game. We all can win. And when I think about being a leader for the city of Buffalo, what I'm thinking is that, change doesn't happen from the top down. It rises from the bottom up. You have to have a constituency full of community members and residents who feel like they're included. As a leader, I'm not here to hoard power. I'm here to empower others. I want the mayor's office. I want the city council. I want people in community meetings to all like the diverse community in which the city of Buffalo is. You all have a voice. And I'm someone who grew up thinking that I did. It only was until that I became older and I became wiser, and I've actually lived the challenges, to persevere, to live the hope of Buffalo, that I can say to you that we are all responsible, that we all have leadership capacity. Don't confuse authority, which is a formal position, for leadership. No, that's not different. Every single person has a capacity to lead in some attribute. Every person has a voice to speak up, to fight against the wrong, and to move the thing forward. We also have to be realistic. We have to keep in mind the capacity of despair. Martin Luther King used to always talk about the moral arc of the universe and how it's long, but it's bent towards justice. And what he's basically saying is that if you're looking for real change, systemic and structural change, it's not going to happen overnight. You have to persevere. You have to do the painfully, incrementally slow bit of change. And I know by working with our citizens, our elected officials at both the city, the county, the state, and federal government, that we'll have a better Buffalo. Thank you.
So change does come from the bottom, but unfortunately the top can stifle change. And in Buffalo, in my lifetime, the top, the leadership has been stifling change. Buffalo is slow to adopt new practices. Buffalo was slow to even recognize new Americans were coming into Buffalo. Buffalo School District was slow to respond with language programs, translated tests. So we always seem to be running 2 steps behind in Buffalo, but it's mostly because the folks at the top, they weren't looking for change. They like it the way it is. Right now, a lot of things work in City Hall to the benefit of the people who benefit from City Hall, whether it's family members on payrolls, contractors getting contracts, developers getting tax breaks. It all works for them. But in my lifetime, the city of Buffalo has experienced these great fits of progress, only to be pulled back. Now we're in the situation where we can barely plow our streets. We don't fill our potholes. Sidewalks are a mess. The Buffalo Marathon was just held last weekend. 7,000 runners came, hundreds from out of town. And when they were given their welcome brochure, they were told to be careful on the marathon route because it's not a safe running route. Potholes are going to be all over the streets. Then have people standing in the marathon route in potholes telling runners to go around. So we've lost this ability just to do the basics, let alone taking on the hard issues. Substandard housing, vacant lots, housing discrimination, lack of employment and economic opportunities for everyone. So when I get into City Hall, we're going to do the basics. And we're going to do them all right, so people have the idea why they pay their taxes. But then we're going to take on the tough issues, like creating a welcoming center, like rebuilding our neighborhood that we've seen thousands and thousands of demolitions, but that's the only plan is demolition. That is it. It ends there. We need affordable homes for people, not apartments in a big building, houses, singles, and doubles. So for you kids at Riverside and Hutch Tech, when you graduate, you have a place in our Buffalo economy. And those are the changes we need to make. I mean, the city's been in a tough spot for a long time, but it's just always just sort of catching up. But the rest of the world is moving forward. So we have a lot of hope and we have a lot of promise, but it doesn't mean we're going to achieve it unless we have good leaders at the top willing to embrace change and embrace progress to give us the better Buffalo that we all want and we deserve.
Thank you so much. With that, we now conclude this forum. We wish you best of luck in your endeavor for becoming next mayor of Buffalo. Round of applause for all candidates. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
And a round of applause for the organizers and everyone who put this together.
Please feel free to enjoy the food that is sponsored by our community members and organizations. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
It's a tough crowd here.